Greetings, and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us at the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, or you can find us online at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. Now, as we kind of get into this morning, and I promise this will make much more sense as we get into it as we go. But we are in this passage where, it's a struggle sometimes to try and figure out what it is that Jesus is saying. And when we take these passages very, very, very literally, like some folks try to do, that's when we have the most problems. But that's really not what it was that Jesus was intending when he was doing that. Jesus was doing something that all of us do at some point in time, and that was that he was making exaggerated statements, or he was using hyperbole. Which is exaggerated statements or claims not meant to be taken literally. We do this all the time when we say, I'm starving to death. No matter how many times I said that to my parents when I was growing up, they knew I really wasn't starving to death. They knew that I knew there were popsicles in the freezer, and that's what I really wanted. But we make these exaggerated claims because we know they get people's attention, and we know that we can convey some of the meaning of what it is we are working with through those statements. And so that's what we see Jesus doing this morning, but we got to kind of get there. One of my favorite blogs that's out there is a site called Hyperbole and a Half. If you stop and think about that name for a second, it's really saying an exaggerated exaggeration. That's just what they do. And the writer of that, she takes certain situations and she kind of exaggerates them a little bit to describe what's going on, or to describe maybe what she is feeling. And she does a great job of it. She also has you'll see she's not very good at art, but you also have to understand she's doing all of this in Microsoft Paint. And so she's making all these drawings on her computer using this. So they're intentionally drawn this way. But one of the best ones that she's got out there is on the struggles of being an adult, and what it means to be an adult. And she starts it off. She's got this great chart. You don't need to be able to read all of it because you're probably not going to be able to read it from there unless your eyes are really, really good. But on the bottom, you have going to your right is level of responsibility. As you go farther to your right, your responsibility gets greater. And your amount of productivity is what's going up towards the top. And so you see down at your far left, where it says where you have no responsibility but a high level of productivity, that's when we're doing things like breathing and our heart is beating. It requires no work on our part, but we're really good at it because it just happens. And things kind of move more into the direction we gain more responsibility. The high point of it is when we take on like our first major adult task, like getting a job and going to work every day. We're feeling pretty good about that. I remember when I got my first job as an adult, I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. I can do this. I can do this adult thing. So I'm not sure what that means, but I can be an adult, kind of. And so it feels good, but then we realize that the farther and farther that we move towards the other side towards the right of that chart, we get more and more responsibilities, and it becomes harder and harder to do. And part that I wanted to point out is this part over here where it says system failure. That's that part where we kind of get overwhelmed, where things just have become, we've got that one more thing that came on and this kind of pushes us over the edge. Now, I don't know about you, I know what happens when I get to that point. That's when I make that list. That list of here's everything that I have to do. And I'm going to tackle that list, and I'm going to do that list. I'm going to get all of these things done because, gosh darn it, I am a mature, responsible adult, and I can do all of these adult things, and I can do that. And then we tackle that list with energy and with excitement because we're going to be an adult and we're going to get this done. And so we go to work, we get our stuff done, we go run errands like an adult, go grocery shopping, and this one, we clean all the things. And this one is my favorite because I know what happens sometimes. I look at my house and I've got a sink full of dirty dishes. I've got laundry that needs to be done. I've got a living room that looks like my post office exploded on it because I don't ever put anything up. It just kind of sits on the table. We stop and we say, well, we're going to clean things. We're going to clean all the things. We're looking at all this mountain of stuff. We have no idea where we're going to start or how long it's going to take, but we know we've got to do it. So we're going to take care of all of that. We're just going to dive into it and not really having any idea how it's all going to happen. But that's where we go. And it works for a while. We get pretty good at doing some of the things. And you can see she's pointing up there to this trophy on there. And the trophy up there says, that right there is my ability to be responsible. I won it when I was 25. And sometimes it feels like, hey, I've done this. I've been responsible. I've been a mature, a responsible adult. And I almost wonder where my trophy is sometimes. And then I realize that was probably revoked at some point later on down the road. But that's kind of where, that's what it feels like. We feel like we have done something. But it gets hard after a while. And then when it gets hard, we're like, no, I've still got this list and I committed. I'm going to do that list because I'm a mature, responsible adult. And then that's about the time I drink about 2 pots of coffee and I say, I can do all of this. And we start working and taking care of everything and going on, but it gets tiring after a while, trying to maintain all of that stuff. We go through all of those same places, but we're more tired, more worn out. It's harder to do. And this one is probably, again, another one of my favorites, and because if you've got kids, you know what this feeling is. I've got to clean all the things. And then you get all the things cleaned, and then you look back and you realize, wait, a half an hour has gone by and it's all dirty again. What happened? And you look around and say, wait, I've got little kids that are running around. That's what happened. And it just kind of, I see a couple of the kids grinning back there because they know they've done that. That's what happens sometimes. We find ourselves, and it gets tiring and exhausting. And we figure, where are we going next? What do we got to do now? And this may kind of be our response sometimes because what we're doing doesn't quite work. We've got to figure out a new way of doing things because what we're doing doesn't quite get us there. I go back to there because this is my favorite one of all of these. Because it describes kind of what we go through. And in fact, if you look across the internet, if you spend any time out on Facebook at all, you will run across some version of this. It'll have a different caption. May have the dude up there holding something different in his hand. But it's become a statement for saying we're really overly excited and overly enthused about doing something, but we have no idea what it is we're doing next. It's kind of this, that's what it's become a symbol of. And you can probably see then what I have done to that. And I look at it that way. Because this is what happens a lot of times when we approach Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and especially these passages we're in today. Is we look at it and we say, we are mature, responsible Christians. We should be able to do all the things. We should be able to preach all the things. But maybe we aren't sure really what it is that's actually there. We've been told what's there. We've been told how we're supposed to deal with it. But, so we're going to go and try it because, again, we're those mature, responsible Christians. And we know this is a thing we're supposed to do. But we forget that Jesus has a different agenda in mind than what it is that we are doing. Because Jesus begins making all of these statements that are out there to make a point, but not necessarily the one that we've been told. So we go back, we start with one of these. This is verse 20, saying, I say to you that unless your righteousness is greater than the righteousness of the legal experts and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, this is a pretty big statement. It doesn't sound a whole lot like something Jesus would say. I mean, this is, you've got to be more righteous than the legal experts, and, this is kind of a hard place to go. If we take this literally, it becomes really difficult to live up to. But we've got folks that have figured out a way around this. And you'll get those some folks that they'll come up and they'll kind of puff their chest out, and they'll kind of stand up there and they'll go, well, but we have grace. That's how we get around this. God's grace is more than sufficient to make us more righteous than all of the legal experts that are out there. And all we've really done is we've managed to create a loophole around this thing that is out there outside of us. So that's one place. Another place we look at is a little bit later on. It says, there we go. It says, but I say to you that every man who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery in his heart. And then we have this next portion under that comes right in that paragraph also that says, if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If we were to take all of that literally, there'd be a bunch of us that wouldn't have eyes or hands walking around, because then, this is a hard statement that Jesus is making. Again, we'll have folks that will come out and say, well, but God's grace is good enough for all of this, and so we've managed to, we come up with a different set of punishment or consequences for it, and so we've made another loophole around this thing that is out there. On the other side of it, we get to the one that is the most difficult and the hardest and has caused more harm and more hurt and more pain in our churches and in our society than a lot of other things have, because we have this statement that Jesus makes. He says, but I say to you that whoever divorces his wife except for sexual unfaithfulness forces her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. This is, you stop and you kind of analyze that statement, you realize that there is something missing in here. That, guys, we're okay. We can get divorced and there's no consequences for us. Instead, on the other side, all of the consequences really fall onto the women. Now, that doesn't sound like a very Jesus thing to say, because Jesus isn't exactly known for pointing out one group of people that's going to suffer more than another group. That's not something that he does. But we have to remember what it is that Jesus is trying to get us to in all of this. He's making these statements because he wants to draw us to a point, but not the one we've been told all this time, because the way we've been taught these things over the years has been, a lot of ways, has been harmful, has been hurtful, and it has led to all sorts of trouble that Jesus never intended. He's working to get our attention with these statements. And he's doing a pretty good job of it. But he's got to get us there first, because he's got a more important lesson in mind. And so we've got to stop and realize a couple of things. That there are no loopholes and no things. And by things, we're talking about objects, behaviors, actions, things. This list of stuff that Jesus has been making statements for, that he's been using as examples. Some we've talked about this morning, some that we're going to talk about a little bit next week. He's got these list of things that more often than not we have said that these things are evil and bad in and of themselves, that they are the cause of sin and evil and bad things to happen. What we've done when we take those things is we have set them outside of ourselves, over here someplace. And when we take those things and we set them outside of ourselves, they're no longer a part of who we are, and that makes it possible then for us to make loopholes to get around it. It makes it easy for us to come up with a way to get around that, because we can see them as outside of ourselves. We say, well, these are the things that are causing us to do harmful or hurtful things, and so now we're going to make this loophole to get around it, which really only benefits the folks who can take advantage of the loophole and doesn't really benefit anyone else. And we're really good at finding loopholes. If you ever wonder how good we are at finding loopholes, sometime talk to someone who works for the IRS. They will tell you how well we can find a way around stuff if we really set our mind to it. That's not Jesus' intent. Jesus is pointing out to the folks who were there listening to him. And throughout his ministry, he says, these things that are out here are not things that cause harmful or hurtful things to happen. They are the result of things that have already happened. They are the result of something that has been broken long before that. And that's where Jesus says, that's where I am concerned with the most. All of these things, we can get caught up in that, but that is the end result of something that is already broken. And it's that thing that is already broken that is the most important. The thing that has caused hurt and harm and pain and anguish and sin and bad things. And it's not just for the actions and things that we do, because sometimes we are broken for lots of other stuff that has happened. Maybe someone has gotten sick, or someone has passed away, or something has happened that we don't quite understand. It causes us to be broken in some way. And Jesus says, that's where I am concerned the most, because that's where I can help the most, because I can help you to fix those broken things. I can help you to be a whole and complete person again. I can help you to find a way through all of that brokenness. Because he says, that's what my biggest concern is. The rest of this stuff, those are, set those things aside. Because there's somewhere in the middle of this, you are broken first. That's what needs to be taken care of. Now the result of that it isn't that we ever come back to the way we were before. Because that's not what happens. Remember when the kids were up here, I could take my tape and I could tape these pieces of paper back together again, and I could remake that paper airplane, but it's not going to be the same way that it was before. But it can be brought back together, or, I can make 2 other paper airplanes from all of that, and they will work just as well as they did before. And Tom's got his back there too. He's ready to throw it at me if I'm not careful.
This may be a slight exaggeration. This has been designed to fly to the moon using solar power. If they don't make it, it could be it's too dark in here.
At some point, all of us are going to be hurt or we're going to be broken. Either by things that have been done to us or things we've done to someone else, or by just the fact that life goes on, we're going to be broken in some way. And what we need in the middle of that is not someone pointing out to a list of things saying, oh, well, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and that's wrong, and here's this loophole to get you around that. That doesn't really do anyone any good. But we need someone who can come in and say, I can help you go through that, come out on the other side, be a whole and complete person again, whether it is that things have come back together and they have managed to kind of reform what they were before, or something new and something different has taken shape because of that. That's what I can do. And that's really what we need. Not all this talk, all this stuff, all these things that folks keep saying. That completely misses the point of what Jesus was trying to teach. He was trying to teach and tell us that here I am, here's what I can do to help you through this, because otherwise we live in this impossible world where none of us can ever be right and none of us can ever be good. But Jesus says, I live in a different world, one that I can help and I can fix and I can help you through. Then on the other side of that, we take up this point. And this is, too often we see this passage where Christians are described as the bright, shining city on the hill, a light for all the people to see. And too often I hear some folks talk about this, and it's like we're in this very privileged position on top of this hill, and everyone is looking up to us because we are such a great example of everything. I want to point back to that second sentence there. A city on top of the hill can't be hidden. Let that sink in for a second in light of the things we've talked about. Jesus is saying, you're going to be on top of that, and the light is shining, and you aren't going to be hidden from all of that. That means all of these things that are broken, folks are going to be able to see them. I'll let you in on a secret. No, folks see that stuff anyway. We can't, as good as we try to think we are at hiding things, we aren't. So folks will see that. But the most important part, the light that shines, is what's important for folks to see, because it's the light that shines that helps to bring us through that. And that's what people need to see. It's that light that comes from Christ that helps to pull these things back together, to fix what is broken, to make us whole and complete in whatever way that looks like going forward. That's what people need to see, because we live in a world that is full of lots of broken people. We aren't any different than anyone else in that regard. Everyone at some point, Christian or not, is going to be broken. What they need to see is that there is hope beyond that to bring us through that time. That's the kind of light that we are, not because we're in some sort of special place because of what God has done, but because we have that light of Christ that helps to bring us through. That's the message we need to share with the world around us. That's also the message we need to remind ourselves of at different points in time also when things get hard, is that we have a Savior who is there to bring us through, to fix us, to complete us, to make us whole again in whatever way that looks like. Let us go in this next week and share that hope, that message, that promise to a world that needs to hear that hope and that message and that promise. Let us go and do that in His name. Amen.